everyone. I am so glad we get to have Sunday school class together to say hi and study some more of God's Word and just to share everything God gives us. I hope you all are doing great, and I've been thinking about all of you this week. So let's go ahead and get started on the lesson we have for all of our Sunday school classes for the younger children in the beginner and the intermediate class. So, we're going to be talking this week on the provisions that come from God. And what that means is that God provides everything that we need. And you'll see right here in front of me that I have some little animals with me today. I have a cow and I have a little lamb. We have the grass and we have the trees and the things from outside that God provides. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And so we're going to be in the book of Psalm. Most of our verses we're going to study today come from the book of Psalm, and you can have your family help you find that book in the Bible. It's sort of in the middle of the Bible. It starts with the letter P, Psalm, and then we're going to go to Genesis. So let's get started. We're going to be in Psalm chapter 104, and we're going to be reading, first of all, verses 10 through 14. And I'm going to stop and we're going to talk about each verse and find out what is our little animals here in the grass and the trees. What does that have to do with what we're talking about? And remember, we're talking about God's provision. So we're going to Psalm 104, and let's start with verse 10. And verse 10 says, He sendeth the springs into the valleys which run among the hills. And so outside where the hills and valleys are, and like you can see here, I have my little hills, that God sends water. And the water comes from the springs, and it helps feed the animals and give them drink. You know, they would be thirsty and they would die if they didn't have any water to drink. Just like with us, we need to have water. And so God provides everything from the springs. And he tells us that right there in verse 10, it comes from God. That's so something to think about and be very happy about how God takes care of these animals. So let's go to the next verse, verse 11. They give drink to every beast of the field. The wild asses quench their thirst. So we just talked about that, how the little animals get their water and that they need water to survive, and that all comes from God. He provides, so that's that provision is the water. So let's go to the next verse, verse 12. But by them shall the fowls of the heaven have their habitation, which sing among the branches. That's the little birds. Now, I don't have a little bird with me here, so I want you to think about it. Probably when you look outside your window or your door, you can see birds or you've heard birds chirping. Well, do you know the birds that God gives them their place to live? God takes care of them and they sing. When I got up this morning and was reading my Bible, I could hear the birds singing. And you know, that's such a blessing because God, just like my little tree I have here, that little birds outside in the trees, they find a place to live and they're safe. And that's because God provides the tree and all the leaves and the branches for the birds. No wonder they sing because they're happy where they live. So God provides for them. Let's go to verse 13. That's our next verse. Remember, we're still in Psalm chapter 104. Verse 13. He watereth the hills from his chambers. The earth is satisfied with the fruit of thy works. And again, this is talking about that water that God gives. He sends it down the hills and the mountains, and all the animals, they have water to drink. Do you know the water that you drank today, the water that I drank, that it came from God? You may have went to your water faucet and got a cup of water or had a water cooler or a bottle of water. That came from God. He provided for you too. And verse 14, I love this verse. He causes the grass to grow for the cattle and herb for the service of man, that he may bring forth food out of the earth. Do you know that God puts all of this green grass out there for the cattle, which Here's my little cow right here. He eats grass. So that's his food. And so when you drive by in the car with your family and you see cows out in the field, you can see them eating grass. When you see horses, usually horses, their heads down eating the grass. That's how God feeds them. And he takes care of them. They don't go to the grocery store. They don't even have to have any money. God provides for them. And do you know that he gives us our vegetables and what the Bible calls herbs? Those are things that grow in the ground. And it takes God to send rain and sunshine so that the vegetables will grow. I don't know how many of you your family may grow a garden. And that's kind of exciting to put that seed in the ground and then watch it grow. And then you have to wait for it to grow. And then you go out and you can pick some cucumbers and tomatoes and some lettuce and cabbage, whatever you plant. Well, that all comes from God. So just like these animals, God takes care of us. Isn't that wonderful? So we just talked about the water and the grass and the herbs and the vegetables. Boy, that's already enough, isn't it? If we stop talking right now, how God provides all of that. But do you know, there's so much more. So now, let's talk about the trees, the hills, and the rocks. So verse 16, we're still in Psalm chapter 104. Verse 16 says, "The trees of the Lord are full of sap, the cedars of Lebanon, which he hath planted." So God planted all the trees. So when you look around your house or in your neighborhood, look at all the trees. Do you know it took God to make those trees grow? And he planted them. And that is just like us. God planted us. And he wants us to grow in him by coming to church, by coming to Sunday school, by reading our Bible and praying. So let's read verse 17. "Where the birds make their nest, and for the stork, the fir trees are her house." We talked a few minutes ago about how the birds, they're safe on the branches and they sing. Well, you know, the little birds, they will make a little nest. In mine and Dwayne's backyard, we have we have a mommy bird, and she's been picking up twigs and things from out in the yard, and she's building a nest for little baby birds that she's getting ready to have. And do you know, God made her smart enough to know how to do that. The mommy bird doesn't have any money. She can't go buy supplies to build a house for her baby bird. So God has provided all of the twigs and the grass and everything out in the yard so she can build a nest for her little baby, and they'll feel safe. It's so pretty to see. And then verse 18, "The high hills are a refuge for the wild goats, and the rocks for the conies." And I've got a picture here on my phone, if I can get it. I had a picture of a coney, and here he is. And I want you to see, can you see that? He's got little short legs, and he kind of looks like a little rabbit. But this is called a coney. And this is an animal that comes like around here, around these hills, and hides. And see, it's kind of, he couldn't run probably very fast, and a wild animal could get him. So God provides all the hills and the rocks that the conies and the wild goats and all the animals can get safety. Do you know we have safety in God? We can be safe wherever we go. So I thought this was neat to show you a picture of what a coney looks like. We don't see too many of those around here, do we? But that's what a coney looks like. And so God takes care of them and keeps them safe. And do you know, if we go to Psalm chapter 50 and verse 11, let me get to that quickly. Okay, Psalm chapter 50, verse 11. "I know all the fowls of the mountains, and the wild beasts of the field are mine." So all the animals belong to God. They're all his. So every time you see an animal, think about that. They all belong to God. And then in Genesis chapter 1, that's the very first book of the Bible, and verses 20 through 23. "And God said, Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and the fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of the heaven. And God created great whales, and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth. And the evening and the morning were the fifth day. So God created all of these animals. He created you and